Hello, mến chào tất cả quý vị anh chị em đã vào diễn đàn Phim My Vlog. Hôm nay là ngày 3 tháng 8 2024 giờ California là 11 giờ 17 phút gần buổi trưa. Hôm nay là cái poll thăm dò của hai vị ứng cử viên Kamala Harris cũng như là cựu tổng thống Donald Trump tranh cử ghế tổng thống 2024. Thì hôm nay là chính thức là bên đảng Dân Chủ đã đủ cái số phiếu đại biểu cho bà Kamala Harris đại diện đảng Dân Chủ tranh chức cái ghế tổng thống của Hoa Kỳ. Thì hôm nay là cái poll mới nhất ngày hôm nay, để nó có cái sự thay đổi nào hay không. Thì mời quý anh chị em để xem. Mình có phụ đề Việt ngữ ở dưới, cái người nói là tiếng Anh nhưng có phụ đề Việt ngữ, cũng như là nó có mỗi tiểu bang nào có bao nhiêu cử tri đoàn, và tổng kết cuối cùng là ai sẽ được cử tri đoàn để thắng cử ghế tổng thống 2024. Xin mời quý anh chị em xem.
Developments in the presidential race, including the assassination attempt, President Biden's withdrawal, and Kamala Harris's candidacy, have created significant uncertainty in the upcoming election. But let's take a look into the latest polls to see what the current presidential race is looking like. Recent polling data may come as a surprise, with significant movement in key swing states from the Republican candidate. But for now, starting with the safe states, these ones present a margin higher than 15 points on the polls for each respective candidate. The states we count as deep blue states are California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont, D.C., and Maine's 1st District. The Democratic Party starts the race with 96 electoral points. The safe states in the red are Alabama, Alaska, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska and its 1st and 3rd District, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, West Virginia, Wyoming, and Maine's 2nd District. So the GOP starts behind with 88 points, but these are only the safe states. Now, let's look to the likely states, which are those where the candidate has a lead between 7 points and 15 points. Starting with Kamala Harris's likely states, we can fill in Washington, coming to the map in the verge of a solid state with 14 points, according to the latest public policy polling amongst 581 likely voters. Washington is a long-lasting Democratic state, and even though Biden was showing lower numbers in the previous polls, it is not surprising that Harris was able to raise it up again. Maine is another well-known Democratic state that was not showing great signs for the incumbent president. As we can see on the graph, Biden started March with a wide lead, and then the margin got dangerously close after May. But the last poll for Harris gives her the lead by 8 points when third parties are involved, according to the University of New Hampshire Survey Center, amongst 1,445 likely voters. Minnesota's latest poll by Survey USA amongst 656 likely voters showed a 10-point lead to Harris, which would put the state right into the likely category. But it's important to emphasize that the latest poll by Beacon Research, funded by Fox News, amongst 1,071 registered voters, pointed to a lower number to the Democratic candidate, a 6-point lead. But, either way, Minnesota, which was a narrow battleground state for the past 2 elections, is expected to stay with the blue side in November. New York joins the blue party with a very positive number to Harris. The latest poll by SoCal Research amongst 500 likely voters presented a 11-point lead to the DNC. Given the wide gap of the last 2 losses by Trump in the Empire State, the predictions are quite below what was expected in both 2016 and in 2020, where Trump lost by over 20 points in the state. Also presenting an 11-point gap, we have Oregon. In 2020, it was a deep blue state by 16.1 points, and has not voted Republican since '84. Given its history and the most recent polls for Biden, we should not see much of a difference in the margin for the new DNC candidate. Colorado has voted blue for the past 4 elections and has been by Biden's side throughout the polls for the entire year. There's still no polls with the new candidates, but there are no reasons for us to predict a House change. The last Biden poll showed a 10-point margin to the incumbent president, according to the poll by Global Strategy Group, amongst 800 registered voters. Illinois also shares this category. The Prairie State shows a 13-point margin to the incumbent president on the latest poll by John Zogby Strategies, with 643 likely voters. Illinois has also been Democratic since 1992, being a solid blue state for the past 4 elections. Even with a Biden dropout, the state is not expected to have drastic changes. Rhode Island was a deep blue state in 2020 with a margin of 20 points, and until May of this year, it presented the same data. But the latest poll by Embold Research amongst 1,450 likely voters shows a fall to a 7-point lead to Biden. That puts the state on the limit of this category, on the verge of falling to a leaning state. Now moving on to the Republican candidate, Florida starts as the first likely state for Trump. The state that since 2008 was decided by narrow points and until 2016 was blue. Now, in 2024, it is led by Trump by a high margin of 8 points, based on the Redfield and Wilton Strategies poll sponsored by The Telegraph, with 572 likely voters to back it up. This state has not been so certain since 1996. Iowa has voted alongside Trump for the past elections, both in the likely range margin. Now, the latest poll by Signal amongst 600 likely voters shows a 12-point lead. This prediction is not expected to change with the Democratic candidate swap. The former president is also ahead in Mississippi by a likely margin. The last poll showed a 9-point lead against the incumbent president, according to the John Zogby Strategies poll amongst 423 likely voters. In 2020, Ohio's predictions were very close between Biden and Trump, but ended with an 8-point victory for the Republicans on Election Day. Now, in 2024, Trump leads with 10 points against the Democrats, according to the Remington Research Group poll, with 611 likely voters. South Carolina has been Republican since 1980. In 2016, Trump carried the state by 14.3 points, and in 2020 by 11.7 points. This year, the last poll against Biden showed a 12-point red margin, according to John Zogby Strategies. Texas has shown to be a very loyal state to the Republicans over the years, such as in 2020, which Trump won by 5.6 points, even though the year was fierce for both sides. In 2024, there are no polls focusing on other candidates, but against Biden, Trump leads by 9 points and 49%. In that same poll, Kennedy has 5%. Now the red side is in the lead, but only by 7 points, and we still have 162 electoral votes for grabs. But if you want to stay informed about the development of the presidential race and find out the impact that the new Democratic candidate will have, don't forget to subscribe to Ballot Breakdown. Now moving on to the leaning category, where the respective candidate is leading by 3 to 7 points. New Hampshire is a state where Trump had a chance to flip in 2016, but in the end, it backed Clinton up by less than 1 point. And against Biden in 2020, his loss was over a 7-point margin. Everything points to a similar result to Harris. The latest poll by St. Anselm College Survey Center, conducted with 2,083 registered voters, presented a 6-point lead to the vice president. Arizona had been considered a Republican stronghold since 2000, but its point gap narrowed in 2016 until the 2020 election, which was led all year round by Democrats, leading to Biden's narrow victory by 0.3 points. In 2024, it was red again for the entire year, with Trump ahead by 3 points, based on a Redfield and Wilton Strategies poll sponsored by The Telegraph with 510 likely voters. The state of Georgia has been red since 1996, but the last election was very tight for both sides, leading to Biden's narrow victory by 0.24 points, as it did in Arizona. Now, it appears that the Republican Party has regained its strength in the state, leading all year, but still holding a small margin of 4 points, according to a SoCal research poll sponsored by On Point Politics amongst 505 registered voters. In Michigan, the last election was more decidedly for the Democrats, and in 2020, it led, resulting in Biden's victory by 2.8 points. In 2024, the results are more uncertain with a tight race, from Biden to Harris, but Trump leads by 3 points, according to a SoCal research poll sponsored by Red Eagle Politics with 500 registered voters. In 2020, North Carolina was led all year round by Biden with an average of 1.1 points. But in the end, the victory went to Trump with 1.3 points. In 2024, the Republicans led with an average of 5.2 points against Biden. With the arrival of Harris, Trump is ahead by 3 points, according to Redfield and Wilton Strategies, sponsored by The Telegraph, with 586 likely voters. Indiana and Kansas are also in the leaning category for Trump. Indiana presents a 4-point gap according to the most recent poll from John Zogby Strategies conducted amongst 418 likely voters, and Kansas shows a 5-point red lead based on the latest poll from John Zogby Strategies with 410 likely voters. Both show a decrease in the numbers for the former president since he first ran for the Oval Office. In 2016, Trump had a huge win in Kansas by a margin of 20 points, and in 2020, it fell to 14 points. In Indiana, he won by 19 points in 2016, and in the last election, the result fell to 16 points. Trump has definitely been losing his favoritism in these specific states. Arkansas has been the stronghold for the Republicans in the past 5 elections, being a safe, deep red state for Trump in 2020. The latest poll against Biden shows a 7-point gap for the former president, according to John Zogby Strategies, with 385 likely voters, putting the state on the verge of becoming a leaning state. Moving on to the swing states where, yes, you're seeing it correctly, these grayed out states are the new swing states from the latest polls. Virginia in the last election had something impressive. The state, which has always been red, in 2020 was won by the Democrats by a large margin of 10.1 points. In 2024, Harris leads but by a smaller gap of 2 points, based on Emerson College polling amongst 1,000 registered voters. New Mexico completes the blue swing category as it shows a decrease from the last election to the Democratic side. New Mexico has voted for the DNC candidate consecutively since 2008, and in 2020, Biden carried by a comfortable margin of 10 points. Now, the latest poll by 1892 Polling shows a 1-point margin to the incumbent president. Now moving on to Nevada, Biden won the state in 2020 by 2.4 points. As the 2024 election gets closer, things are changing. Republicans have been ahead in Nevada this year by an average of 6.2 points. But recently, their lead has dropped, according to a poll by Redfield and Wilton Strategies for The Telegraph, which talked to 435 likely voters. Trump's lead is now just 2 points. Wisconsin, despite having its largest margin of 8.4 points for Democrats in 2020, had a narrow result with a 0.6-point swing to Biden, showing that the state is a tight one. It will remain tight in 2024 throughout the year, as the most recent poll shows, with Trump ahead by 1 point. Based on Beacon Research and Shaw & Company research, sponsored by Fox News, with 1,046 registered voters. Pennsylvania and its 20 electoral votes have been a very important battleground for the past couple of elections. In 2016, Trump carried the state by merely 0.76 points, and in 2020, Biden flipped it back by a margin of 1.2 points. This year is no different. Pennsylvania will be a determinant state in November, and the candidate who is currently carrying it is Trump by 2 points, according to the poll by Morning Consult amongst 804 registered voters. In 2020, New Jersey was a safe state for the Democrats by 15.9 points. Now, the latest poll by United 2024, a Republican-sponsored poll, showed a flip of 2 points for Trump amongst 477 registered voters. The 2nd District of Nebraska presented a tie between Trump and Biden in the latest poll, according to Torchlight Strategies, amongst 300 likely voters. With all the states filled in, the current polling data shows 326 electoral votes to Trump and 211 to the DNC.